comfy chairs up here are not reserved for anyone, so anyone can have them. All right, welcome to Malvern Books. We are here this evening to celebrate the release of Michael Parker's 7th novel, which we have available over there. And so tonight we'll be hearing from Michael, but first we'll be hearing from Laura Furman. Laura Furman's books include 3 collections of short stories, 2 novels, and a memoir. Her most recent collection is The Mother Who Stayed. She has received fellowships from the New York State Council on the Arts, the Dobie Paisano Project, the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Since 2002, she's been series editor of the O. Henry Prize Stories. For many years, she taught at the University of Texas at Austin, where she is now Professor Emerita. Furman lives in Austin with her husband and their son. Please welcome Laura Furman.
Stephanie, I'm going to read from an old collection of mine, Watch Time Fly. And I'm going to read a story that I wrote on the back of an envelope. It's a pretty big envelope. When I was driving to Texas in 1978 to move here. And I'm reading it because Michael Parker not only has a new novel, he's got a Texas driver's license, which means he's a citizen. So I'm
way more important than your novel.
Much more important, so we should celebrate that, the TDL. Okay, so this story is called For Scale. I was moving far away, leaving the East for the first time. My sister and I arranged to meet at the Port Authority to take an evening bus to the Berkshires to visit our parents at their summer house. We would stay one night. At the bus station, I looked in Wayland's for postcards of New York, and I thought of the people I was leaving. I would send them cards from my stops on the long drive south. I saw my sister at another postcard rack, one aisle down from mine. She was turning the rack discontentedly, as if she wanted a view of Manhattan they hadn't taken. I watched her for a few minutes, waiting for her to notice me, but I'd ordered a coffee to go and gotten it from the counterman before she looked up from the cards. We rode through a sultry Indian summer evening, leaving the Hudson, leaving the Bronx River, until we reached the green places, the one where I'd gone to camp, the towns in Connecticut and Massachusetts too small for a post office, gone in a wink. The green became deeper as we rode, and by the time we arrived in Great Barrington, it was nearly dark. I could just make out my father standing across the street at Melvin's pharmacy, where he told us the bus would let us out. He was waiting for us to see him, waving to be sure we knew where we were. He waited for the light to change and came across the street to help us with our bags. The town looked black and green to me, so quiet after the city. On the drive to the house, I could barely make out the woods. The house is shaped like a cuckoo clock. The light coming through the windows made it look inviting. The lawn felt cool as we walked the small incline to the front door. My stepmother had lit a fire for us in the stone fireplace and held 2 portions of dinner. My sister and I were seated next to each other, so we both faced the fire as we ate. My sister left the table twice to be sure her oboe was warm enough in the bedroom where she left it. She keeps the oboe wrapped in a mylar blanket in its case. but still she worries that it will crack when there are changes in the temperature. We went to sleep right after dinner, and it was a deep sleep for me, 1 minute into darkness. In the morning, my sister and I woke at the same time. We were sleeping in the back room, the one most sheltered, and it was impossible to tell if it was early or late. The house is set in the woods under ancient pines that steal the sun. The curtains were drawn and the paneling gave off a slight smell of pine. My parents bought the house when I was in college, and I hadn't spent many nights there. I thought about packing up my own place, what I should take, what I would leave. My stepmother had eaten hours before and wasn't in the house, so my father made eggs and English muffins for the three of us and served them on the screened-in porch. He talked about the trip to Europe he and my stepmother had made last spring. We thought we'd play it by ear, he said, not make any reservations, but we didn't count on several obstacles, one of which was Easter. Everyone told us, oh, we can't help you now, we're getting ready for Easter. And after Easter, it was just the same. But eventually, they reached the navel of the universe, Delphi, and traveled to Crete, visited Minoan ruins, loved the Cretan people, drove on switchback roads to the high, hidden villages. Why is it so difficult for me to listen to other people's tales of travel? Am I jealous of their good times without me, or are the stories badly told? Rather than listen, I watched my father and thought what a good picture it made, him in his plaid shirt and golf cap against the background of screen and pines. The talk went from Greece to Latin, a language all three of us had studied with varying degrees of success. My father was the best of us. I never understood, as he helped me struggle with Caesar and Cicero, how he could remember anything when he'd been out of school so long. My sister had 1 year of Latin, all in tutorial, but never got past Caesar. Soon my father and I were remembering lines from Virgil. For sonnet haec olim meminissa iuvabit. The ship is sinking, my father said, and sea monsters are rising up to meet the crew. All seems lost, and Aeneas says, one day we'll look back even on this and smile. I couldn't remember where my lines came from, but I remembered what they meant. Ein priamus, sunt hic etiam sua primea laudi, sunt lacrimae rei ret mentem mortalia tangunt. Ah, Priam, Aeneas says, even here there's praise for you, and human tears for human things, and mortals held in mortal memory. After we cleaned up the breakfast dishes, my sister and I went outside. We walked around the house, surveying the lawn our parents had smoothed and extended, the woods they'd thinned, the paths they'd carved for walks. Then we found our stepmother on the new patio out front. She was sitting in a lawn chair, listening on her portable radio to the House Assassinations Committee. She'd been listening to it all month, she said. My sister and I pulled up aluminum lawn chairs and formed a half circle around her, our faces up to the sun that trickled through the trees. I remembered coming home from school at lunchtime during a certain spring of my childhood to find my mother listening to the HUAC hearings then being broadcast. Years later, when I saw a famous documentary on HUAC and Joe McCarthy, I misunderstood what I saw and thought it must be a continuation of the lunchtime show my mother had liked. My father appeared with his camera and started circling us to get the photos he wanted of me and my sister, then my sister and stepmother, then the three of us together. He asked us to turn our heads, then to look as if we were talking to one another. When my sister protested having her picture taken, he said what he really wanted was a picture of the house and the pots of tomatoes and flowers on the stone steps. We were only serving as figures in the foreground for scale. Enough. After a few more pictures, my sister and stepmother had had enough. My stepmother turned off the radio, and we all walked into the woods to see the new gazebo. The gazebo sits on a cliff deep in the woods overlooking a rushing brook, a good spot for trout, my father says. The previous winter, vandals had destroyed the original gazebo, and now, after the insurance claims had been made and my stepmother had been diligent in looking for bargains in gazebos, there was this new screened-in structure, bigger and sturdier, better in every way. The roof was yellow and white like a circus tent. We admired it from the outside, then went in. The furniture was also new, redwood and chrome with yellow cushions. The chairs had been delivered, ready to assemble, my stepmother said, with some necessary nuts and bolts left out. She'd made 3 extra trips to Pittsfield to collect the missing parts. My father took one more picture. Then I asked for the camera to take a photo just of my parents. I stood as far back as I could in the gazebo, and my father told me to stop fooling around with his camera. It's focused, he said. I focused it for you. But I had to bring together the double image between my parents of the pine trees and the screen, and a little bit of my father's shoulder. After that, I handed the camera back to my father. How many shots are left on that roll, my stepmother asked, and my father said there was only one. Then take a picture of the sound of the brook, she said. My father said he would use the last shot for a study of the woods, and he went to the door of the gazebo. I told him I guessed he would really take a last picture of the 3 of us sitting on the new furniture. No, he said, you can't get a picture through the screens. I could tell that my sister was getting restless, that she was ready to move on to friends with whom we were visiting for the rest of the weekend. I didn't mind any of it. The gazebo, the woods, the photographs. I wanted copies of every one of them. After all, I was going so far away. Thank you.